I've had the iPad mini 7 for 6 months now, and I really thought this was going to be my final iPad. Like, I was convinced this was going to be the one that I used all the time. The perfect middle ground between my iPhone and my MacBook or other iPad Pro. Small enough to take anywhere, but still powerful enough to get actual work done whenever I wanted to. And at first, that was kind of true. I was grabbing it constantly, using it on the couch, in bed, even while walking around my apartment for no reason, just because it was so easy to pick up and use. But then, after a while, I started noticing something. Not that anything was wrong with the iPad mini, but I did just start defaulting to my other devices instead of using this one. And the weirdest part, the whole reason I got this iPad mini to get myself off my phone, I would just be using my phone instead. And not even intentionally. There are just moments where if I want to watch something or just chill for a little bit, getting the iPad mini is just that one extra step when I already have a phone that is basically almost the screen size in my pocket. Let's go ahead and break this down. Alright, so when I first got this iPad mini, I had a very specific idea of how I thought this was going to go. I thought this was about to be my perfect everyday iPad, small enough to carry anywhere, powerful enough to handle everything, and just always within reach. And honestly, it started off great. It's really comfortable to hold, it's the perfect size for just general use, and I was grabbing it constantly. But then I started noticing I just wasn't using it as much as I expected. And this isn't because I don't like it, but it's just because I kept reaching for those other devices without realizing that I am not using this as much as I thought I would. And then longer term, after a while, honestly, I just started using my iPhone instead of this most of the time. And at that point, I had to ask myself, if I'm choosing my iPhone over this iPad mini most of the time, what role is this actually playing in my general kit? Now, before I get into why I started using this iPad less, I do have to give the iPad mini credit for a lot of the things that it does really well. Even though I don't use it all the time, the moments that I do pick it up, I am always in shock of how well this device actually works with everything that I need it to do. Like when using some devices, I tend to second guess myself and be like, do I really want to use my MacBook for whatever this is? But the iPad mini, I don't really get that feeling. Now, obviously the iPad mini is small, that's kind of its whole thing. But what I didn't expect is how much this would influence the usability and what I use this device for. With an iPad Pro or an iPad Air or even a MacBook, you have to use it with two hands and it is slightly cumbersome to use. Whereas with the iPad mini, I've been holding it up this entire video and it has not made me feel any type of way. It's just so easy to use. It's also the only iPad that I feel like I don't have to have an entire workspace set up dedicated to use this device to its fullest potential. Like if I just want to read something real quick or check something in an app, I don't feel like I need to commit to using an iPad. The mini is just lower effort. It's the difference between taking out your phone or using your laptop. It just feels different the way you use both those devices. Speaking of low effort, this is by far the best iPad for reading or articles or just general knowledge use. Now, I didn't realize this when I first got this, but when I did get this iPad, I started using it more and more. Using it for reading just felt like a very natural use case for this. And it doesn't even need to be ebooks. You could be reading articles or just scrolling through the internet and reading up on some stuff. Any type of knowledge reading is just so much fun to use on the mini. The size just makes it perfect for holding it for long periods. It's lighter than a book and it feels way more natural to use for that use case than a bigger iPad. Like I know technically an iPad Pro or another device can fill the same use case, but it just feels different using a device that is about the size of a book for that use case. Now, if you just wanted a super fancy Kindle, honestly, that's reason enough to give this thing a shot. It's just a little more expensive than the Kindle, obviously. Another weird thing, this is probably the best iPad for using the Apple Pencil and taking handwritten notes. Because it's smaller, writing on it actually feels more like a notepad, and I can hold it in one hand, write on it with the other without feeling like I need to set it down on a desk or have it kind of elevated in any way. The Apple Pencil also just fits the iPad mini's aesthetic, I think, really well. It doesn't look comically big on the iPad mini, and it just sort of makes it cohesive and come together a bit more. I do like the aesthetic. Now, I will caveat by saying if you are in school or you're taking pages and pages of notes, this may not be the right size for you, and having a bigger notebook or a bigger iPad might fit your needs better. But as someone who isn't in school anymore and just wants some quick handwritten notes or jotting stuff down, I would 10 times out of 10 prefer using this instead of a bigger iPad for that use case. So yeah, portability, reading, and note-taking, all huge wins on the iPad mini. But the more I used it, the more things came up that I didn't really expect that kind of hindered the experience. So the iPad mini does a lot really well, but over time I realized I wasn't reaching for this device as much as I thought I would be. Sometimes for certain things, it just made sense to use other devices instead of the iPad. And it's not like there's one big flaw that is the reason you shouldn't use an iPad mini. It's just sort of the experience as a whole and a bunch of little things that tend to add up. Okay, so here's the thing. The iPad mini is great for reading and quick tasks, but sometimes the size and aspect ratio make it feel a little awkward. Like, I expected it to be the perfect entertainment device, but in most situations, I just found myself defaulting to my phone instead. I mean, if you have a plus or max size phone, which I do not, you probably know what I mean here. Sometimes the difference between the iPad mini and your plus or max size phone, or even a regular iPhone nowadays, just isn't enough to justify the usage of one or the other. Also, watching YouTube videos or watching Netflix on this iPad, the screen that you get here isn't fully usable due to that aspect ratio instead. So when it comes to watching content and hanging around, like, sure, you get a bigger screen by using an iPad mini, but it's actually not substantially bigger as you would think just because of the aspect ratio of this. That makes one primary use case that I had of wanting it for entertainment outside of gaming kind of a moot point when other devices like my laptop or a bigger iPad do that so much better than the iPad mini. Now, I knew the iPad mini didn't have ProMotion when I first got it, obviously. It has a 60 Hz screen, doesn't have the 120 Hz refresh rate, but I thought it wouldn't affect me as much as it actually did. After a few months of bouncing around my iPhone, my iPad mini, my iPad Pro, and even my MacBook sometimes, the 60 Hz really did rear its head here. Now, the 60 Hz refresh rate isn't bad, but when every other Apple device I own is smoother and runs more fluid, it makes using the iPad mini just a bit of a harder pill to swallow. Now, this might just be a me issue. Could just be me. But I will say, if you have an iPhone Pro in any capacity, or a MacBook Pro, or an iPad Pro already, using a 60 Hz screen is just so difficult nowadays, especially in a touch-first sort of use case. I mean, it's not like it makes the experience bad, but it's kind of like using an older monitor after you've gotten used to a high refresh rate one. It's totally fine, but you do notice it, and once you start noticing it, it's really hard to ignore. And then there's the keyboard situation, or rather the lack thereof. Apple makes amazing keyboards for the iPad Pro and the iPad Air, but for the Mini, nothing. And that wouldn't be a big deal if there's some third-party keyboard cases that work well for this, but there really aren't. Sure, you can use a Bluetooth keyboard, but there's no trackpad on those. And some of the trackpad and keyboard layout that I've seen on Amazon for the iPad Mini are just not good. I mean, they'll get the job done, don't get me wrong, but I would love a first-party experience for using an iPad mini to that capacity. The iPad mini, to be fair, is just not built for that use case, and that's totally fine. It's meant for a touch and pen first experience. But when I'm talking about bringing this instead of bringing my MacBook or my other iPad sometimes, it does tend to be a little bit more difficult to make that decision in case I need to type stuff up or do a bit more of real work. So if I need to do anything remotely productive, I'm definitely gearing towards my iPad Pro or my MacBook almost every single time. So if you were hoping to use the iPad mini as your main device, which is a little bit crazy, this is where you'll probably get a little bit frustrated as well. So yeah, the iPad mini is really good at a lot of things, but after 6 months, I've realized it's just not the first device I grab anymore. For me, it's more of a secondary device, and that's totally fine. It's amazing for specific things, but it's not a device that I rely on for my everyday, normal use. And because of that, that did make me wonder, is it actually worth keeping 6 months later? So after 6 months, where do I actually stand on the iPad mini? Is it worth it? Honestly, yes, but only for the right person. There are two types of people that are going to love this iPad. If you want the most portable iPad ever, and if you hate using your bigger iPads, no matter what, this is the perfect device for you. It is the only device for you. This is the only smaller iPad that you can get. Or if you read a lot, take handwritten notes, or just want a casual iPad for quick tasks and to get you off your phone, this is again probably the best iPad you can use for that. But if you're looking for your iPad to replace a laptop, be your main entertainment device, or do serious productivity work, you might get frustrated with the iPad mini's limitations. And that's kind of where it lost me personally. I wanted to use it for everything, and I wanted to replace my phone like almost all the time. But over time, I naturally defaulted to my other devices that I already have, like my MacBook, my other iPad Pro, or my phone, way more than taking this one out. For me, my iPad mini basically became a very niche and secondary device, which works for my use case, but for someone who's trying to justify a purchase and seeing if this is really worth it in your everyday life, it does kind of make it a hard pill to swallow as a purely secondary device. So if you know exactly what you want to use the iPad mini for, and it fits your use case, this is a great device to use, and it is probably the only device Apple makes that is still in this sort of form factor. But if you're on the fence or you think you can use a bigger screen or have a bit more features, I would probably avoid the iPad mini altogether. But I want to hear from you. Do you think the iPad mini is worth it, and what do you use it for in your actual day-to-day life? There might be some use cases I missed, like I know that pilots use the iPad mini a lot for their systems and whatnot, So I'm curious if there's any other use cases that you guys use. And if you found this video helpful, please do drop a like as it does help a ton, and consider subscribing if you like more 6 month later and deep dive types of reviews like this one.